Welcome back from watching the video. The last thing that we're going to do together is to review the EL work that we all did at Maui Waina together last October. We're going to think through all of these different guiding principles, and we're going to think about these strategies from that strengths-based perspective that we talked about in session 1. And we are approaching all of these strategies with our knowledge about BICS and CALP now, so that we're not doing something brand new. We're looking at the work that we've actually been doing at Maui Waina all year, but we're looking at it through a new lens, through that lens of knowing that our students are in the process of developing that academic language that we want them to have to be successful. So looking back over these guiding principles for effective EL instruction, take a moment and read through these 1, 2, and 3 here on the screen. So let's look at that principle number 1. Students must use language consistently and routinely to progress in language learning. What does this mean? It means that we have got to build in opportunities for our students to talk. We want them using both formal and informal language so that they can be practicing the language that they are learning. It has to be a safe space, and I know that our Maui Waina teachers are so excellent at creating those safe spaces for our students. They must be embedded in every class period. They need to be predictable. The more routine these practices are, the more comfortable our students are going to be in attempting to use language. And until they're comfortable trying it, they're not going to own it. So in all of our classes, we want to consistently give them opportunities to use language in a safe space. Principle number 2, students need to experience language in ways that are meaningful, that matter to them. This means we have to invest in our students, again, something that Maui Waina teachers do so well, learning what their background is, building on that background knowledge. That lets our students know that their life experiences are valuable. As we talked about in the first session, in many ways, they have a leg up. Knowing another language, we want to validate their experiences. We want to validate their home culture so that they know it's not you've come here, drop everything and learn English. It's the most important. No. Everything that you've experienced is so valuable and is going to be such a bonus to these students going through their lives. We find out what they care about and give them opportunities to read, write, speak, listen to things that are important to them. And principle number 3, the communication modalities support each other. We think, when have I given my students an opportunity to hear, speak, read, write these words? Those are all going to work together across all content areas. I used to have a sticky note that I kept next to my desk that said, what opportunities have I given my students to hear, speak, read, write these words? And that wasn't just for ELs, that was for all of my students. If I want my students to embrace new academic vocabulary, to be speaking in a certain way, I have to be the one that models that. The first thing they have to do is hear it. So I have to be the one who is speaking in a way that they can then emulate it. So think of that. What opportunities do you give your students daily to hear, speak, read, write those words? The hearing part has to come from us. We are the ones who have to be using the language that we want our students to emulate. After we've heard it, then they can try to speak it. After they're hearing it and speaking it, they can start to recognize it in print. They're reading it. Once they can write that word and put it into their own writing, we know that they are on their way to owning that vocabulary word. And as a reminder, we have these 6 strategies across all content areas for our English learners at Maui Waina. And these are things that we've been striving to incorporate into all of our learning and opportunities all year long. So let's think back on all of these strategies. We know now that language acquisition can take a long time. We know it can take 5 to 7 years, some cases up to 10 years. So what that really means is that these strategies just become vital to be the norm. We need these 6 strategies just to be the norm across all content areas at Maui Waina. Every single class is going to give students an opportunity to turn and talk to each other. Every single class, the teachers are going to use that wait time. This is a tricky one for teachers often. Me, I'm raising my hand. But I have to get into the habit of asking my question and then just being comfortable with that wait time. Not taking the first person who raises their hand and letting them answer, because then when we do that, the same people answer over and over. And the signal that that gives is that many students in our class can simply sit there because they know that there are students who are going to answer and the teacher will keep going. The wait time allows everyone to think their own thoughts, really deeply process, coupled with turn and talk, turning to tell your table partner, hey, here's what I think the answer is. As a teacher, I'm going to get much better responses, much more thoughtful responses from many more students when I make sure I'm using that wait time and I'm allowing my students to turn and bounce their ideas off of each other. If they turn and say, hey, I think it's this, and their partner says, oh yeah, I thought the same thing. Oh, I am much more likely now to raise my hand and be willing to share whole class than I was just a couple of minutes ago when I was like, well, this is what I think, but it may be wrong. Nobody likes to be wrong. So now if I'm wrong, at least this other person is wrong with me. It just creates a different atmosphere. We need this in every class, every day. Sentence stems gives our students a way to have those conversations. Oftentimes we say, hey, turn and talk to your partner about this, and we get, they don't know how to start the conversation. The sentence stems give them a way into that academic conversation. So you can say, hey, I want you to turn and talk to your partner about blah, blah, blah. Here's how I want you to start that conversation. My thoughts on blank are blank. All right, start your conversations with that with each other. And it just gives them a way to, almost a template to start that conversation. Journal writing, as we said before, when we can write those academic terms, we really own them. So giving them an opportunity to write every single day using those academic pieces, very valuable. Front loading, we know this is really essential when we know students don't have the background knowledge that we would want them to have. Providing that background knowledge in whatever way is going to be most meaningful to them, so valuable. And then finally, the 10 and 2 or chunk and chew. What that means is I'm not going to talk for more than 10 minutes without giving my students at least 2 minutes of interaction. And oftentimes it's better if it's 5 and 1. If I'm going to give information for 5 minutes, I need to give my students 1 minute to interact with that information and with each other so that that information is more likely to stick. We're going to add one more strategy, and that strategy is anchor charts. Anchor charts become a really essential way to remind our students what we are learning. It gives them a visual. And we know that visuals are absolutely essential for not just our English learners, for all of our learners. We talked last time about the Chinese proverb, I hear and I forget. Teachers, we want to think that what we have to say is so vitally important, but honestly, students are very likely to hear and forget. I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. This is giving them that see opportunity. So taking what we are learning about, putting it in some kind of a chart, and I'm going to say not just in our PowerPoint slides, but some kind of a chart that stays up on the wall so that they can refer to it. When they're struggling, they know where to look, they know where to go to get the information that they need. We really have to make sure that learning is visual. We want these anchor charts to be a tool for learning how to learn. That's what these anchor charts do for our students. Students have this as a resource. There's a quote there on the screen. I'm going to give you a moment to read that quote. I love that quote because it really says no excuses. This is a very low budget way of teaching. Just putting, it doesn't have to look, these anchor charts up here, they're adorable. Ours don't have to be that cute. They really don't. They can simply be vocabulary words and definitions. They can simply be examples of what we're learning in math or in any subject. Don't feel like, oh, they have to be super cute and fancy. They do not. They simply have to be a representation of what we are learning so that when our students need that reminder, they know where in the room they can look to get that extra help. So we're at the end of our time together. Well, the end of my time. You're going to be doing some reflecting and some planning after this video is finished. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to pause, think, and ink. In what ways have you been consistently using those EL strategies? When you glance back at this list, can you look at those and think like, man, I have really been using turn and talk and wait time consistently all year. My 10 and 2 has been amazing. Journal writing, that's something I could grow in. Or sentence stems, yeah, I can see how my students would benefit from me giving them that framework. We're going to reflect on how we are coming along with all of those strategies. What else can we do? What other strategies have we found that are making our students successful? How did you know that that strategy is creating the success that you want? And then what challenges do you have in carrying out, sorry about that. What challenges do you have in carrying out these practices? So you're going to be pausing, think and ink, have a conversation with your table partners. Then finally, the last thing you're going to do is on page 11 of your participants guide, you're going to create an action plan. You're going to identify a goal. What's something that you want to be better at as an educator in order to facilitate deeper learning with your ELs? What are the steps that you can take to get there? What resources will you need? Who's responsible? The timeline, when do you want to make this happen? And then how are you going to know? How will you know if they're successful? I'm going to say thank you now for all of our time together. You can let the video go and then just take your time to do our reflect and our action planning. I hope that this has been helpful to just remind us of the importance of teaching and planning in a way that will benefit our ELs, because when we teach in a way that benefits our ELs, it actually benefits all of our students and we become even better educators. Thank you so much.